What if one of the world's most desirable cities is quietly losing the people who built it? Right now, behind the skyline of Dubai, something unusual is happening. Over 127,000 visa cancellations in a single year. Rents rising as high as 40%. Global companies slowly shifting operations elsewhere. An anonymous executive once said, "We survived the pandemic, but when rent jumped again, we finally broke." 15 years in Dubai finished in an instant. And today, we are going to understand exactly what that means. But to understand why people are leaving now, we need to first understand what made Dubai so powerful in the first place. Just a few decades ago, Dubai was a quiet coastal settlement. Today, it stands as one of the most recognizable global cities in the world. In less than 50 years, it transformed into a hub of finance, tourism, and international business. But here is what makes it truly unique. Nearly 85% of its population consists of expatriates. People came here chasing a simple promise: tax-free income, rapid opportunity, and a global lifestyle. And for years, that model worked almost perfectly. But now, that same system is beginning to show signs of pressure. And once you look at the numbers today, a very different picture begins to emerge. Have you ever wondered what a silent shift looks like in a global city? It does not begin with headlines. It begins with numbers that feel small at first until they are not. In 2024, more than 127,000 visas were canceled in Dubai, a number that quietly exceeded new entries. On paper, it may seem like a routine fluctuation, but when placed in context, it signals something deeper. Now look closer. School enrollments began to drop by nearly 23% in some areas. Families were not just relocating at the end of contracts, they were leaving in the middle of the academic year. That is not normal behavior for long-term residents. At the same time, professional networking events, once packed with energy, started seeing lower attendance. Spaces that once thrived on connections began to feel noticeably quieter. And then there is the digital side. Online expat communities, which once shared lifestyle tips and success stories, began shifting tone. More discussions about exits, more questions about relocation, more uncertainty. But here is the part most people never hear about. This shift is happening quietly. Public discussion remains limited. Corporate environments discourage open conversations. And without loud signals, the trend remains largely invisible to the outside world. Think about that for a moment. A global city built almost entirely on foreign talent, experiencing a gradual outflow of that same population, without a clear public narrative. And that raises a critical question. Because numbers alone do not explain behavior. People do not leave without a reason. But numbers alone don't explain everything. The real question is, what is pushing people to leave? Picture this: you are living in a city that once promised financial freedom, and then almost overnight your expenses begin to change. Across Dubai, rent prices have surged between 35 to 40% in key areas. In places like Dubai Marina, apartments that once cost 80,000 AED annually are now reaching 130,000 AED or more. That is not a gradual increase. That is a sudden shift, and it does not stop there. Rent caps that once provided some level of predictability have been removed in many cases. Now, housing costs can change rapidly, often without long-term stability. For individuals, this creates pressure, but for families, it creates a breaking point. Education costs are rising as well, increasing by 15 to 25% annually in some institutions. Schooling, housing, daily expenses all moving upward at the same time. And here is where it gets interesting. Dubai was never just about high income. It was about high income with controlled expenses. When that balance disappears, the entire equation changes. An anonymous executive once said, "We survived the pandemic, but when rent jumped again, we finally broke." 15 years in Dubai finished in an instant. That single statement captures what data alone cannot. This is no longer about opportunity. It is about sustainability. People are not necessarily leaving because they want to. They are leaving because staying no longer makes financial sense. And when enough individuals reach that conclusion, it begins to affect more than just households. It starts reshaping the structure of the city itself. And when living costs rise this fast, it doesn't just affect families, it begins to reshape entire industries. What happens when the people begin to leave? Eventually, the companies follow. Over recent years, there has been a noticeable shift in where businesses are choosing to operate. Some major firms have started relocating parts of their regional operations to cities like Riyadh and Singapore. Reports suggest that in some cases, up to 40% of regional operations have been moved or restructured. Now, this is not a sudden departure. It is gradual, strategic, calculated. Saudi Arabia, for example, has been actively attracting companies and professionals, offering incentives such as housing support, education benefits, and long-term opportunities. At the same time, remote work is changing the rules of geography. Companies no longer need to base themselves in a single central hub. Talent can operate from multiple locations, often at lower cost, and that reduces one of Dubai's biggest historical advantages. Because for years, Dubai was not just a city, it was a gateway, a place where global talent and business intersected efficiently. But now, competing hubs are offering similar access with more stable cost structures. And this creates a new kind of competition. Not loud, not sudden, but steady. And here is the key insight. When both talent and companies begin to explore alternatives at the same time, the entire ecosystem starts to shift. But even as companies move out, another problem is making it harder for people to stay. Now, you might be wondering, if opportunities still exist, why not simply adapt? This is where policy begins to matter. In recent years, visa structures have started to evolve. Programs like the Golden Visa, once seen as a pathway to long-term stability, have introduced stricter requirements and higher thresholds. Processing times have also increased in many cases. For highly skilled professionals, this creates uncertainty, because long-term planning depends on predictability. At the same time, new salary requirements are affecting family sponsorship eligibility, meaning not everyone can bring or maintain their household in the same way as before. And slowly, the model begins to shift from long-term settlement to a more temporary workforce structure. Now, this is based on publicly available information and is presented here purely for educational awareness, but perception matters. And for many expatriates, the perception of stability is just as important as reality. If people feel uncertain about their future in a place, they begin to look for alternatives. And when that happens across thousands of individuals simultaneously, it creates a pattern, not visible overnight, but undeniable over time. And when all of these pressures come together, the impact goes far beyond individuals. Dubai is not collapsing, it is evolving. But the direction of that evolution is what matters. For decades, the city built its identity as a low-cost, high-opportunity global hub. Today, it is transitioning into something different, a high-cost, highly competitive environment. And that shift carries consequences. Real estate dynamics begin to change. Consumer spending patterns adjust. Talent flows become less predictable. At the same time, regional competition is increasing, especially from countries investing heavily in attracting global talent. So the real question is not whether Dubai will remain important. It will. The question is, what kind of city will it become next? Because global cities do not stay the same forever. They adapt, they shift, and sometimes they redefine themselves entirely. Dubai was built on attracting the world. The question now is, can it keep it? If this made you see global cities a little differently, consider subscribing, because there is a lot more happening beneath the surface than most people realize.